And let's get rid of the mainboard. Oh man, what a cable spaghetti. I'm just going to remove everything so far but I'm not going to be needing. Then of course the cable for the fan itself, and there we go. But the device has been used for quite a long time and has never been cleaned, that's a fact. Okay, but all the dust is going to be removed. And another thing what I find quite intriguing is the way how they giving the hard drive, or at least like the internal DVD drive, power. So converter cable, need to be very careful that I'm not going to be losing those. Okay, but in the end, let's remove all of these cables. There are 2 of them. We're going to put them in storage and we're going to clip them so there are not going to be any lost whatsoever. So we can even use an internal hard drive with Batocera if needed. So let's remove everything. We've cleaned up the CPU. Let's remove the CPU cooler because this is something that is really necessary. The thermal paste will be completely dried out. And yep, I was right. So the thing that we're going to do is clean it all up. Let's remove the CPU cooler. The fan itself still spins, still works, so that's not a problem whatsoever. And let's clean up this thermal paste and replace it with something else. So with a dry piece of paper, we're going to remove it. And yeah, the toilet paper manual from China. But next up, let's take a close look at the CPU specs. And yes, it's going to be the i3, let's see, zooming in, 3220T. So that's actually the CPU that has been used in this socket. Next up, of course, the thermal paste need to be removed with the paper over here, the cleaning cloth. And then we're having 2 of the cleaning bottles with 2 different kind of cleaning goodies in the inside. So the first one is going to be removing all of the thermal paste that's still on the cooler, but also on the CPU. And I can tell you it's really necessary. Even if you're going to be like trying to clean up with a cleaning cloth, what I'm doing over here, it's still going to have like a lot of residue. So I'm going to have like a very nice cleaning. And the second bottle is going more for like purification. So next thing we're doing with a new cleaning cloth, going on the same surfaces, and you will see there's still some filth on it. And that's it. So this is the second one. Let's open it up. Let's get a clean cleaning cloth over here. And let's make it wet. And then we're going to be rubbing it over both of the parts. Sometimes there is nothing on it anymore. Sometimes it will still have a little bit of an, let's say, residue. And everything has been cleaned now, so we can implement the new thermal paste. Okay, so a rabbit hole for thermal paste. There is one out there. And yeah, there are so many different ones out there. This is the MX4, but it was also like the MX, let's see what kind of version we're still having. This is the Scythe, the one I'm having, the Scythe, and this is one from Noctua. Oh boy, like they have different kind of results, but this particular one is not going to be something that is super exciting, simply because it's just an old i3. So let's get one of these. I think we're going to get an MX4. I think there was also like an MX5 or MX6 that was slightly better, but also more expensive. And just going to put a tiny blob in the middle. And let's check out. And I think this is one of the best ways to go to when it comes to these older, smaller CPUs. Oh, man, this thing is very different kind of an like a thickness. Doesn't matter. Okay, let's implement it. Let's put the CPU cooler back and let's go on with the show. But putting the CPU cooler back on, you need to be very careful. You cannot, let's say, put too much pressure on one single screw. You need to be very careful, giving it a little bit of a turn every single time. We don't need to forget, so when it comes to, let's say, double checking if this is making the perfect contact, plugging back in the CPU fan is also very handy. So where we have 2 banks, or at least like 2 RAM modules, but we do have 2 different kind of brands. So mixing is not always the best thing, but we're having 4 and 2 GB or 6 GB in total. So we're ready to go. Everything has been assembled, so let's boot up. Let's plug in a keyboard, press F1 and get into the BIOS itself. Yeah, it's just going to be asking that I need to implement a disk, or at least we're going to do it differently. We're going to use some Batocera, and of course we're going to check out if it's going to be recognized as it can be booted through the USB. We can also use the SATA, and we're going to remove the enclosure, but that is one of the cool ways to play. There is, I must say, unfortunate, not a lot of different, let's say, ways you can mess around with the system. It's very limited. Secure boot configuration needs to be shut down, simply because it's going to be messing with the boot of Batocera. Another solution, what they're selling, is one with or without a controller. I think one of those companies is Kinhank. It's the same situation where they're having 2 terabyte hard drive. I think there were even cheaper, smaller ones, but 2 terabyte is basically the sweet spot when it comes to the storage capacity. Okay, but how are we going to get the software? You can just download this for free. Batocera.org. Here we can find the software that we're going to need for installing and getting yourself like this mini PC to run all kinds of retro games. So what you need to do is go into the download page, and you can already see over here that we have all kinds of, let's say, hardware that is supported with Batocera. So this is not like some simple program that is only possible to use on a mini PC. There are all kinds of different handhelds and devices, or just general devices that can get the Batocera running. But the thing that we're going to need, we're not going to scroll through the whole list. In here we're finding the desktop, laptop and other devices. That is one of the ways you can go to. But another thing you can do is, depending on what kind of software we're needing, is that we're having underneath, we're having all kinds of different versions, even to the Anthem and the low power devices. And here we're having old PCs. You can even run Batocera on that too. If you're going to be needing to flash this on a certain kind of storage device, the program that I most of the time use is Balena Etcher. It's a very nice to use free download. You can just download it for free and getting yourself your Batocera installed and flashed, or even on Mac OS. From this point you can just launch the file they've downloaded, the image file, and just burn it to your storage device. And I've been messing around with this mainboard for some time now, but after updating Batocera I managed to get ourselves, like say, a working operating system with a combination of this older i3. But let's take a close look at the specs and what can we actually do with it, because it was a big surprise to me. I just wanted to see actually what can we play with it. We have tried so many cheap game boxes that struggled with many different systems, including N64. So I'm really curious, what can we actually do with this old school mini PC? Can we play N64? Can we play PlayStation Portable? And how far can we push these devices? Or at least like the emulators. So let's get into the menu itself and look at the specifications. So first let's go to the system settings, and in here we find the information. So when it comes to, let's say, the temperatures, this thing is around like 29 Celsius, and that is not hot at all compared with the mini PCs that we've reviewed here on the channel. So it comes with OpenGL 4.2. This is a very old i3. This is a 3220T running on 2.8 GHz, but does have a quad-core configuration. So the CPU max frequency is 2800 MHz, so in other words, it has been boosted to the maximum. It comes with an old, let's say, GPU, the Graphics 2500, and I'm really curious what we're actually getting when it comes to, let's say, overall performance with, let's say, the later emulators like the SSPP emulator for the PlayStation Portable. Okay, so first up, let's take a close look at some old school GBA. So if you want to build yourself a retro emulation beast with old hardware, you don't need a lot of specifications. I think if you're getting, let's say, an old Pentium 4, you can even play some GBA now. So that's not going to be an issue whatsoever. So I don't really want to focus on, let's say, too much of the old stuff, because it will run just fine on this i3. But another thing I want to check out is, for example, some Panasonic 3DO. That does struggle on a lot of game boxes, even some, let's say, low-powered mini PCs. Okay, so let's move on into the Panasonic 3DO. Absolutely cool system with many hidden gems. And this runs perfectly without any weird noise going on. Normally when you're having with some mini PCs, you can hear that it struggles with sound crackling noise and other weird things. But also this seems to be running just fine. But let's get into the Sega Dreamcast and let's do some upscaling. So first of all, let's hold the B button. Here we're finding the extra options, the advanced game options. We can choose yourself different emulators if you have any problems with overall performance. But what I wanted to do is go to the upscaling, running resolution 1920 by 4040, and let's see if it's going to be running. And the fun fact of this is that with a very old i3, you can even have some overall cool performance. I do see in here that it struggles sometimes. It's noticeable, so we can also lower it with some different resolution to see how far you can push it when it comes to Dreamcast. But I think it's pretty damn awesome if you're having just an old mainboard like this laying around. You just want to slap it into, let's say, an arcade machine, slap some Batocera on it, and we can do some really cool things with it for not a lot of money in the end. Well, when we're going to look into the Sega Saturn part with different kind of emulators, yeah, the performance in this particular chip is not the best overall, let's say, combination. It's quite unfortunate, so we do have limitations when it comes to this. So if you want to play some Sega Saturn, I think we need to move on to, let's say, newer chips. Think about an i5 or a different kind of last generation that has a way better CPU-GPU combination and compatibility when it comes to certain kind of systems. And this, by the way, on native resolution, not even upscaled whatsoever. Another system that seems to be running just fine is the Nintendo 64. Yeah, so, and why I was surprised by, because there were so many, let's say, cheaper boxes I've tried a gazillion times, and none of them has some overall good emulation performance. And with this cheap, let's say, piece of hardware, you can just actually run N64 no problem whatsoever. But to my surprise, it's even possible to play some Xbox Classic. It will not be with every single game. It's going to be a hit or miss situation due of, let's say, the power of the CPU-GPU combination, and of course when it also comes to, let's say, the emulator and the game support. But Jet Set Radio seems to be working just fine. I think it's pretty damn awesome. By the way, we don't have any music whatsoever due of copyright of the music. I needed to shut it down. But the overall performance, yeah, it's obvious. This game is playable. But moving on to some PlayStation 1, and what makes it really awesome, that we can actually like emulate this all the way up to 720p performance. If you're going to choose, let's say, in Bloody Roar, it's highly possible. We need to scale it down a little bit, but the crisp and good game and all the other ones look so much better than the native resolution that we're getting with the original system. But let's push this thing to the limit. Okay, upscaling with PlayStation 1 is a lot of fun. But let's see what we can do when it comes to PlayStation 2. So, I can tell you, it struggles. But not to the point that it is unplayable. It's going to be a mixed performance, so you need to find out which game will have the, let's say, an okay performance. I can just hear it slowing down. But when it comes to, for example, this particular game, it seems to be running just fine. With PlayStation Portable, we had some amazing overall performance. 4x resolution, PlayStation Portable, this means that it will run on 1080p. And it looks absolutely stunning. So another thing is, spline and Bezier curves quality will be set to high. And that's it. We're just going to check it out. And you will actually see that we're having some great overall performance, and made a quick load, quick save. So we can go to a certain part of the game. And I was just excited to see that we can play some cool PlayStation Portable games on 1080p. Take note, it can be different for each game. God of War is more demanding, so you will have like a different performance there. This game is crazy, but a lot of fun. And on 1080p resolution, it looks amazing. But I must say that when it comes to some certain boss battles, I noticed that there were some frame dips going on, but not to a point that completely ruins the gameplay. I just wanted to do a dedicated video to this particular PC. I picked it up for €5. Yeah, absolutely a bargain if you ask me. It was incomplete with missing parts. For example, the power supply. It's unfortunate because they can become very expensive. But as an old HP laptop power supply, I have a couple of them laying around. So first of all, this is absolutely crazy if you think about it. So you can just connect your device with a dongle. This is an HDMI to a DVI dongle. You can just plug it in. But of course you can use the older connections. Signal output is pretty damn great. Of course we have some limitations when it comes to this particular mainboard, but doesn't spoil the fun. Already mentioned before in this video, if you're going to use this thing, let's say an arcade machine, you can play thousands of freaking games.